Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 2 of Screen Chat. This is a continuing series going over basic rules, guidelines, and general advice I have had over the years as being a dungeon master from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and it gives me the chance to give you general advice and ideas I've picked up on for role-playing specific NPC groups and cultures throughout the Forgotten Realms. Last episode, we started off by understanding and learning about the history and concepts of gnolls. I gave specific advice on how to best roleplay them, how to interpret them, as well as giving you advice on my own experiences interpreting them. But that's enough about gnoll culture and history. I know why you're all really here. To learn how you can use your cackling carnivores to kick the crap out of your party. Well, rest assured, dear viewer, the best has yet to come. Let's start off, of course, with the basic gnoll stat block. They are categorized as medium humanoids with an armor class or AC of 15 and a total hit points of 22. They have dark vision as well as a basic passive perception of 10 and usually only speak gnoll. They get one attack per turn, but 3 different options in the bite, spear, or longbow attack, as well as the ability Rampage, where, when a gnoll reduces a creature to 0 hit points with a melee attack on its turn, it can then make a bonus action to move up to half its speed and make a bite attack. Moving forward, I really want to emphasize how important the Rampage feature is when role-playing gnolls in combat. It reflects the gnoll strategy of quantitative over qualitative combat. Remember, gnolls are advantage pushers. And one of the best examples of this hit and run, divide and conquer tactics within gnoll NPCs are the gnoll hunters. Although boasting a slightly lower armor class at 13 instead of the regular gnoll's 15, the gnoll hunter actually gets access to 2 attacks a turn, again with the bite, spear, or longbow depending on the situation. But what's potent about them is, again, their access to Rampage. Since they have extra attacks, they are more likely to be able to pick off weaker targets and then immediately afterwards be able to move their speed and lock onto a new target, thus spreading the damage around more frequently to multiple enemies. Although I personally like to play hunters in the background, a cornered hunter is just as capable of reducing a player character hit points down to 0, and then using that ability to either hold a hostage by taking an automatic bite attack and putting them at 2 death saving throws, or moving on to another target and keeping the carnage going. Moving up from the first 2, we now come to the real heavy hitters in gnoll culture, the gnoll Flesh Gnar. With an armor class of 14 and 22 hit points, the Flesh Gnars are the primary frontline attackers and berserkers of gnoll hunting parties and packs. To quote Monsters of the Multiverse, these gnolls eschew the use of ranged weapons in favor of using short blades that they wield with great speed and efficiency. In the thick of a fight, they dash across the battlefield, slashing and snarling as they run down stragglers and finish off wounded foes. This is reflected in their 3 attacks a turn, in this case 1 bite and 2 short sword attacks. In addition, they also have access to the sudden rush action, where, until the end of the turn, the gnoll's speed increases by a staggering 60 feet and it doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. So imagine this for a second. The wizard just took a severe attack from a ranged foe, probably a hunter. They're down to only 5 hit points, and they have a Flesh Gnar right in front of them. Obviously, they're going to want to retreat, so they take the disengage action and move 30 feet away, and expect their berserker, barbarian, or noble paladin to protect them. But instead, the Flesh Gnar just laughs and says, nope, uses the sudden rush action, and literally goes a solid 90 feet to catch up to them without any consequence whatsoever. By the time the next turn happens, they can simply once more use all 3 attacks on the poor wizard, and then as a bonus action, once more activate Rampage. Absolutely terrifying. But, of course, what's a hunting party without a leader? That's where the Gnoll Pack Lords come in. Pack Lords are obviously much more powerful and dangerous than both regular Gnolls and Gnoll Fleshnars. They have an armor class of 15, a staggering 49 hit points, as well as 2 attacks a turn, either with a glaive or longbow. But the real danger of the Pack Lord is their Insight Rage ability. Recharging on a 5 or 6 d6 roll, as a reaction, a Pack Lord can target one creature that it can see within 30 feet and can hear the Pack Lord and make them use their reaction to make a melee attack if they have the Rampage ability as well. But unfortunately, no Gnoll hunts forever. When a Gnoll becomes too old or too weakened to attack, oftentimes they are given a proper burial and ritual in order to commemorate their accomplishments and to remember them. But every now and then, a particularly powerful Gnoll's body is preserved in a different way. This is where the Gnoll Witherling comes into play. Sometimes the Gnolls of Yeenoghu are allowed to have their bodies resurrected into skeletal forms that then serve alongside their living brethren. Although much weaker at an armor class of 12 and only 11 hit points, the Gnoll Witherling is a perfect example of the Gnoll's tenacity and ability to make the most out of all of the resources given to them. They can make 2 attacks a turn, either a bite or spike club attack, still have access to the Rampage ability like all Gnolls, and as a reaction can make a vengeful strike whenever they see someone being reduced to 0 hit points within 30 feet of them. Moving on, we come to the big 3 heavy hitters of Gnoll culture. First up is the Fang of Yeenoghu. As the name implies, this is a Gnoll that has been specially blessed by Lord Yeenoghu himself and granted special powers in order for this Gnoll to continue attacking and pillaging in the name of his or her god. While the background information in the monster manual says that any foes slain by a Fang of Yeenoghu that are then eaten by hyenas become full-grown Gnolls themselves, there are no actual stats or abilities listed in the actual character traits to confirm this. Instead, Gnoll Fangs of Yeenoghu have an impressive 14 armor class, as well as 65 hit points. They still have access to the Rampage ability, as well as a solid 3 attacks, 1 bite and 2 claw attacks. The bite in particular is of note because in addition to doing 1d6 plus 3 piercing damage, any target hit by it must also succeed a DC 12 Constitution saving throw or take an additional 7 or 2d6 poison damage. The next important ally in the Gnoll roster is the Shushuva. These are large fiends created by Yeenoghu himself as a sign of favor for a victorious warband or faithful follower. In battle, the demon wraps its slathering jaws around one victim while lashing out with a poisonous stinger on its tail to bring down another. They are loyal only to the blessed Gnoll, usually a Fang of Yeenoghu or a Flint, and fight alongside them to their death. In battle, they have a natural armor class of 14 and a staggering 136 hit points. They also have resistances to cold, fire, and lightning damage, as well as immunity to poison damage. Their multi-attack includes 1 bite attack and 1 tail stinger attack. The bite does 4d10 plus 4 piercing damage, while the tail does 2d8 plus 4 piercing, and then has the target succeed on a DC 14 con saving throw or become poisoned. While poisoned, the target not only has disadvantage on attack throws, but is also paralyzed. Thankfully, they can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of their turns, ending it on a success. Finally, as a bonus action, the Shushuva can of course use the Rampage ability. Now, to wrap up this monster block stat rundown is the big dog himself, the apex predator of apex predators, the Flint. When the demon Lord Yeenoghu wants to create a particularly fearsome warband leader, he transforms an exceptionally strong and vicious Gnoll worshipper into a demonic warrior known as the Flint. A warband of demon-worshipping Gnolls typically contains only one Flint, and is directly responsible for choosing their prey and leads them without fear or without challenge. Because of their special connection to Yeenoghu, a Flint uses direct demonic insight to guide the gnolls towards weak prey ripe for slaughter. And unlike other leaders who might skulk behind their minions, a Flynn leader charges fearlessly into battle, using its flail to cause racking pain, paralysis, and disorientation in those it strikes. As to be expected, the Flynn is an absolute beast in combat, with an armor class of 16 and 127 hit points. They are absolute units that can take on entire parties just on their own. In addition, they also have an ability called Aura of Bloodthirst, where, while the Flynn isn't incapacitated, any creature with the Rampage ability can automatically make a bite attack as a bonus action while within 10 feet of the Flynn. Needing a rechargeable order from your pack lord in order to do it? Not anymore. Just stick near the Flynn and you can do it for free. But they don't just rely on their own allies to kill you. The Flynn can make 3 attacks a turn, one with their Flail of Chaos, one with their Flail of Pain, and one with their Flail of Paralysis. As the name implies, the Flail of Chaos is a standard 1d10 plus 5 bludgeoning damage that causes the target to then automatically make a DC 16 Wisdom saving throw. On a failure, they must use their reaction, if available, to make 1 melee attack against a random creature other than the Flynn within its reach. The Flail of Pain does the same 1d10 plus 5 damage, plus an additional 3d10 of psychic damage. Finally, the Flail of Paralysis does 1d10 of bludgeoning damage, and causes the target to succeed on a DC 16 con saving throw or be paralyzed until the end of their next turn. Now, with that said, the Gnolls aren't alone. They also have a few allies that they can call upon. First up are the standard cultists. As a demon prince, Yeenoghu, of course, is going to attract a number of followers outside of his chosen people. Often a non-Gnoll driven to desperation or disillusionment within civilization will fall under the influence of Yeenoghu. Over time, the cultists in training will begin to undergo transformations, becoming more feral and Gnoll-like while still retaining some of their original skills and abilities. These cultists often take on spy or scout roles for Gnolls, using their abilities to blend in with other civilizations to scout out weak points and capture people for their own demonic sacrifices and tributes to Yeenoghu. And last but most interesting of all to me are the Lucrata. Described in Monsters of the Multiverse as what you would get if you took the head of a giant badger, the legs of a deer, and the body of a large hyena, they are a reanimated Frankenstein-esque monstrosity directly made by Yeenoghu himself during his first rampages. According to legend, Yeenoghu took the few remaining carcasses that weren't eaten by his Gnoll followers, stitched them together, and then breathed life into them, along with a few of his own desired traits, in hopes of creating a perfect guide or model for his followers. This is demonstrated in their more cruel and clever mindsets, as Lucratas love to deceive, torture, and kill. They are great mimics with the ability to mimic almost any beast sound or humanoid voice they hear. However, a creature that hears the sound can tell if they are imitations using a DC 14 Wisdom check, specifically using Insight. In addition, Lucratas also have a stench ability, where any creature other than a Lucrata or Gnoll that starts their turn within 5 feet of the Lucrata must make a DC 12 Constitution saving throw or be poisoned until the start of the creature's next turn. However, on a successful saving throw, the creature is immune to the stench for all Lucratas for 1 hour. Combat-wise, the Lucrata has a natural armor of 14, 67 hit points, and 50 feet per round in terms of speed. They can make 1 bite and 1 hooves attack, with the bite in particular being extremely potent since, on a critical hit, the Lucrata actually rolls 3 damage dice instead of the usual 2. Finally, as a bonus action, they can activate their Kicking Retreat, which allows them to take the disengage action immediately after making a hooves attack. So, to wrap this all up, I want to give you all a quick example of a Gnoll encounter you can use for your adventures. This example is specifically meant for 3 level 4 players. In this case, I will be using a fighter, druid, and sorcerer. The background on this adventure is that they've been asked by a local magistrate to escort a wagon of goods to another city. but as luck would have it, they accidentally get lost and end up in Gnoll territory. As such, when the Gnolls find out, they view the heroes as trespassers and send a raiding party to eliminate them and confiscate their wares. Already, we have the Gnolls' motivation and reaction to the adventurers going into their territory, as well as a threat for them to deal with. Now, the raiding party itself will consist of 6 Gnolls, 3 flesh gnawers, and 3 hunters. However, I could see a more sadistic dungeon master throwing in an additional threat, such as substituting a flesh gnawer for a pack lord, or even adding a Lucrata. Now, let's go ahead and set the scene for this fight. I can already imagine many of the Gnolls engaging in pre-combat psychological warfare in order to set the mood and tone leading up to the fight. As always, it's important for a DM to set the stage for any good encounter. This can be achieved through a number of tactics, such as a few lone wolf calls in the night, animal carcasses on the road, blood trails, and even written warnings from the Gnolls in their native language. Going up to the fight, I could also see a few minor skirmishes or ambushes being put out, but no serious injuries or fatalities. Remember, a Gnoll is someone who likes to take out their target in one go. They will definitely weaken them and pick them off as time goes on, but they prefer to do all of their killing in one fell swoop. Regardless of what tactics you choose, the result should still be the same. The players should know they've made a mistake coming down this road, and they should be aware that at this point, it's too late for them to turn back, and they have to keep moving forward. Now, moving into the actual encounter itself, I would position the 2 hunters at least 30 feet away from the main road. This will allow them to still be within their longbow's range of 75 feet, but not be too close to the front lines of battle. However, I think they will still want to keep close to the combat, not only to make sure that if things go south, they can support their flesh gnawer allies, but if they get tempted, engage in a few melee skirmishes themselves. The flesh gnawers, on the other hand, will definitely want to be as close to the road as possible, probably hiding out in a few bushes, or, if you want to be creative, hiding underneath the road in small dugout foxholes, or in this case, gnoll holes. Give the party a chance to discover the flesh gnawers either by making perception or investigation checks. You can either have them roll off against one another or set a reasonable DC check for them to discover them. Regardless of whether or not the party does or does not notice the ambush, the result should still be the same. When the party is in range, have the flesh gnawers spring out from their hiding place and immediately attack the party. Since they have a surprise round, they will definitely be able to get a few clean hits off on any unsuspecting or unprepared party members. For this example, I would highly recommend having the flesh gnawers first and foremost go after whoever has the fewest hit points at this time. Most likely that will have to be the sorcerer, but if any of the other party members have sustained damage, don't be afraid to have the flesh gnawers go after them as well. Remember, Gnolls are all about quantity over quality, because that allows them to activate their rampage ability and get multiple kills in a single turn. At the start of the surprise round, the sorcerer goes first with a 17, but since only the druid succeeded in spotting the flesh gnawers, their turn will have to be skipped. This then leads up to the 3 flesh gnawers, who are all going to go after the sorcerer with each of their 3 attacks. As a reaction, the goblin casts Shield, which allows the gnawers to only hit them 5 times for a total of 18 points piercing and slashing damage between the various bites and short sword attacks. Afterwards, we go to the hunters. They decide to keep up the pressure on the goblin and attack 2 times each with their longbows. While only one of the attack hits, it's a nat 20. The goblin takes 10 points piercing damage, leaving them badly injured by the fight. However, it's now the druid's turn. She uses her bonus action to cast Healing Spirit on top of the goblin. And thanks to her moon sickle, she is able to heal her for 4 from the spell and 3 from the sickle. Then, as an action, she moves forward and attacks the closest flesh gnawer with her primal savagery. She hits with a 26, dealing 6 points of acid damage to her target. This takes us to the top of the order with the goblin sorcerer. Angered by the ambush, they surge upward with the power of the storm and call forth twin-spelled, shocking grasps on both gnawers. The second one hits, dealing 5 lightning damage to the uninjured Gnar. They then spend 2 more sorcery points to quicken spell Mirror Image, and use their movement to get out of the combat and into 3/4 cover under the cart. One of the Gnars tries to take an opportunity attack against them, but they unfortunately roll on the mirrored image and get too low to even hit that. On their turn, the Flesh Gnars use their sudden rush abilities to sprint past everyone and find the goblin on the other side of the cart. Sensing weakness, they don't hesitate and take all of the remaining attacks against the poor goblin. They roll to divert each one with their mirror images, but by the 4th attack, they've lost all 3 copies. And even with shield, 2 of the 3 attacks hit with an 18 and unnatural 20. They take 10 slashing damage and go down. Then, as a bonus action, the killing Gnoll makes a bite attack against the satyr, hitting with a 16 and dealing 4 piercing damage. The hunters act next and move positions for a clear target. They know the druid is a threat, so the 2 begin pelting her with more arrows. 2 of the 4 attacks hit, dealing 8 points piercing damage. The druid rolls for concentration, but keeps the spirit up. Once more, it's the druid's turn. She uses her bonus action to heal the goblin for 7 hit points, then continues to attack the closest Gnoll. She hits with a 19 and bites into the Flesh Gnar for 7 damage. As she spits out a tuft of matted fur from her mouth, she roars for the fighter to get his butt in gear and help them. Thankfully, it's finally his turn. Wasting no time, the fighter activates his action surge and takes 2 attacks against the Flesh Gnars with his trusty +1 longsword. One of the attacks hit, dealing a hefty 9 points damage. Back at the top of the order, the goblin uses her last sorcery point to twin spell Chromatic Orb against the Flesh Gnars. They use them to attack the 2 healthiest Flesh Gnars, hitting both with a 23 and a 14. Channeling the power of their Storm Giant ancestors, they kill one of the Flesh Gnars and deal 15 to the other. The goblin then uses their Storm Surge ability to fly up to the top of the cart without provoking opportunity attacks. But while their plan has saved themselves from the Flesh Gnars, the druid isn't so lucky. Both remaining Gnars round on the satyr and hit an astonishing 5 times. They deal a staggering 22 damage from the 5 attacks, causing the poor druid to fall. Once more, the killing Gnoll uses their bonus action to charge forward and attack the fighter. They finally hit with a 19, dealing 4 piercing damage as they chomp into a weak point in the fighter's neck. At the start of the hunter's turn, one takes 2 of their attacks against the goblin. They cast shield for the final time and block one of the attacks, but one of the arrows lands with an unlucky 18. The hunter deals 8 piercing damage to the sorcerer, causing them to go down and fall off the cart. As a bonus action, the victorious hunter charges forward and chops down on the fighter. They miss with a 13, but know that there's plenty of time. After all, it's 4-on-1, and with the fighter's only means of recovery being his second wind as a bonus action, it's only a matter of time before the Gnoll's combined attacks and unyielding ferocity slowly whittle down his health and go in for the kill. Now, to be fair, this was somewhat of an uneven combat encounter between the Gnolls and the party. A 5v4 is not always the most fair fight, especially when the attackers have multi-attack options. In addition, the surprise round certainly did not help out any of the party members. Most party groups probably would have been better prepared for this combat encounter in the first place. They would have most likely had a few health potions between the 3 of them. They could have better coordinated group attacks and synergetic strategies between each other, and probably could have played around the Gnoll's one-track, single-target attack strategies. And of course, you can't deny good old player spontaneity and the sheer creative outlets that can come out of these kind of encounters. At the end of the day, this was simply meant to show the strengths and weaknesses of Gnoll fights. First and foremost, they are all about the numbers game. Gnolls will again take out as many adventurers as possible, starting with the weakest players first. The single target mindset isn't out of simplicity, but practicality. Gnolls know that the fewer targets in a battle, the less attacks can be directed towards them. It's the exact same reason why most party members will go after the weaklings first instead of the big bad boss. But, that being said, there are ways to get around this, such as, again, directing their attacks towards more aggressive players, dividing their numbers so that they can't all gang up on one party member, or simply staying out of their reach and using their specifically specialized roles to their disadvantage. Now, for higher levels, I would again definitely take advantage of the numerous ways Gnolls have to activate their Rampage bonus action. This is stupidly broken, especially when you start taking into consideration Pack Lords and Flynn's can practically activate it once or even twice a turn. But don't discount using cheaper tactics like attacking familiars, smaller animals, or, if you want to get really sadistic, have the Gnolls kill one of their allies, most likely a minion or cultist who's already been damaged, and then use that bonus action Rampage to move towards a weakened enemy and attack them. Again, keep in mind that Rampage does not specify whether or not the target has to be an ally or enemy. It simply says whenever they reduce a creature to 0 hit points. That's it. But, as always, it's a good idea to always get in character and really play up the battle strategies and personalities of the Gnolls both in and out of combat. Really bring out their unyielding fury and tenacity in battle. Show their willingness to die for one another and for their cause. And above all else, enjoy role-playing as them during your games, and continue having fun playing one of the best role-playing games ever made. Thank you for watching. Hey everyone, Charlie here. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode of Screen Chat. I know this was a long one, but I hope you enjoyed it all. I had a lot of fun writing and creating it, so I hope it shows. In the meantime, Episode 9 of Yugalov Tabletop will come out this Thursday, June 1st at 6 p.m., while Episode 3 of Screen Chat will come out on June 15th. In addition, we will be debuting Episode 1 of Critical Fail on June 5th. This is a brand new interview series sister podcast hosted by our very own Will Boyle, and I can't wait for you all to see it when it comes out. All music and sound effects used in this episode are under a Creative Commons 1, 3, or 4.0 license and can be found in the respective paste bin links below.